What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Bro Tech Gaming Podcast. This is episode number 8. My name is Carlos.
And I'm Sean, guys. How's it going? Welcome back to the next episode in the series.
Yes.
Before we get started, Carlos, how's your week been, dude? What you been up to?
Week has been pretty good. Just went back to work on Tuesday. Work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I'm off again for 3 more days. So it wasn't that bad. Got a little bit of upgrades for the PC. I got some RAM. So this one is 3600 CL18. It's a 4-stick pack, so 32 gigs still. So
white RAM kit, so it'll match your white system that you got going on. Now you just got to get a new motherboard.
Yeah, I probably won't though, because that's a lot of money for a white motherboard.
And just for the sake of conversation, what was wrong with your last RAM kit that you had in there?
Nothing was wrong with it. It was just the wrong color.
It looks.
Yeah, it just the other one was slower. It was 3200 but CL16, so it's faster timings, but it's kind of an equal trade-off, so it's fine.
It's a problem, right? When we get to a phase when we feel like we've done as much as we can with our computer, we're still always looking for one more thing we can change. We get so tired of looking at the same PC every single day. Like, we want to tweak one more thing, even if it doesn't need it.
Yeah, I think
we just want to start over from scratch all over again.
Yeah, that's just going to be the case forever, because you're going to want a new case, you're going to want new fans, you're going to want a new GPU. Like, I want a new GPU because, I want a white one, but I also want a faster one.
Do it.
I will.
Just do it.
I will. Sooner or later.
4090.
Nah.
2 Gs for a 4090.
And I also got a light. You can't see it, but I got a light. You got me a light, and I feel like the video looks way better, way clearer.
So glossy. I can see the glossiness on your face.
Ooh, can you see the color in my eyes?
No, it's hiding your red eyes when you start to sleep.
Yeah, I'm running on 2 hours of sleep, so if I'm a little off on this podcast, I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll get through it. Fortunately, the topic for today is going to be something that me and Carlos feel very dearly about, and that's going to be our favorite gaming franchises. So basically it's going to be a list. Like, we've each compiled a list between the two of us about what games we played growing up, what franchises specifically we played growing up that we like the most, and basically if they released a new game in any of these series or franchises, like, it would be a game that we'd want to buy like right away. Like, we probably wouldn't hesitate to buy it. If they were still doing those midnight releases at GameStop where you stood in line for 3 hours, we'd probably be standing in line to get these games. So with that being said, Carlos, why don't you start us off on it, man?
All right. So I made a list. It's in no particular order, but I'll start off with Grand Theft Auto. I first played Grand Theft Auto, I think it was on the PS2 for Vice. I think it was Vice City. Oh, no, it was 3. Grand Theft Auto 3.
Three came out first. Vice City came out second.
Yeah. So
I think it came out first on the PS2. So
yeah, so Grand Theft Auto 3. I remember playing that game from start to finish. I was too young for the midnight release, but believe me, I still had the game. I think I had it on like the greatest hits when it was like $20 back when they had those deals.
Bro, remember they had the trilogy. They had the greatest hits trilogy pack. It had all 3 of them on one disc for the PS2. I don't know if you remember that.
Which one was it? Was it Grand Theft Auto 3, Vice City,
and San Andreas?
Was it San Andreas? I thought San Andreas came out on the 3.
No, they still have San Andreas for the PS2. Kind of at its last legs before they updated to the new generation consoles, but they did have like a trilogy that you could buy that was like a greatest hits. It was like $30 though, but it's because it came with 3 games instead of just 1. But I remember that growing up.
Nice. But yeah, so Grand Theft Auto, in no particular order, but it is one of my favorites. I have a lot of good memories playing it with the homie Julio. Shout out to Julio if you're watching. What's up? I actually went to a midnight release with him to get Vice City. We went to the mall and we stayed there till midnight, and we got our copy, went home, stayed up till like 3 4 o'clock a.m. playing it. And so Vice City, the main character was voiced by Ray Liotta, RIP. And he, at that time, he was pretty much my favorite actor because I had started getting into like Goodfellas and stuff like that. And once like his voice was in the game, it was like it made me just love the game even more. So I have a lot of good memories with that game, especially like Vice City with the missions, the whole Miami feeling, the colors, the soundtracks for Grand Theft Auto is always going to be like top tier.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I'd say like for me personally, Vice City was my favorite one out of all of them. I've always liked Grand Theft Auto. They've always been fun, but Vice City was my favorite. Like that whole 80s Miami vibe, like you said, Ray Liotta as Tommy Vercetti, probably like my favorite like character out of any Grand Theft Auto so far. Um, it's a shame they haven't really remade that yet, but apparently the new Grand Theft Auto 6 is supposedly taking place in Vice City, but I've heard like a couple different things based on that, so I guess we'll have to see.
that'll be nice. Hopefully, Ray Liotta did a little cameo before he left.
I don't know. I mean, it's been in development for a few years, so there's a chance, but the rumor I heard about Grand Theft Auto 6 is it's going to focus on multiple cities within the Grand Theft Auto universe. So it's like being able to fast travel to different cities. So you'll be able to see Liberty City, Los Santos, Vice City, all the basically like all the places you've been able to play in previous Grand Theft Auto games, but they're going to give you like more cities to venture to and fast travel to, or it could just straight up be in Vice City. I'm not sure. Um, but after that nasty leak that they had revealing so much gameplay, they kind of closed lips on it all over again because they were probably afraid they were going to have too much information leaked all over. So
Yeah, I'm sure they did some brand new NDAs for everybody.
yeah, for sure, for sure.
So yeah, so that's my first pick. We're doing a top five, so that was 1 out of 5. So if you want to start with your 1 out of 5.
Um, Mine's kind of tough, man, because I don't really have like I can't put them in any particular order either. Um, you've actually got a couple on your list that I also like in my franchise, but I think the main one that I'm going to start off with is Metal Gear Solid. Um, I've always been like a hardcore fan of the Metal Gear Solid franchise just because I feel like the storytelling is like super epic, but also complicated at the same time. But Hideo Kojima, the guy that's basically directed like every Metal Gear Solid that's ever come out in the past, he has such a unique and cinematic style of storytelling that had never really been done before in video games. If you go like all the way back to like Metal Gear Solid on the PS1, um, my best friend in high school, his name's Nick Schultz, who kind of like got me into like video games when I was like a little kid. Like he showed me a lot of games on the Super Nintendo I had never had. He showed me Metal Gear Solid for the first time. Dude, the first time I played Metal Gear Solid, I was just blown away with how like epic the storytelling was. It was a stealth action game, and you didn't really have a lot of that at the time. Everything was very just straightforward actiony shooters. So the fact that it was stealth and there were consequences to some of your actions in combat, I thought was really really cool. Um, the characters are really cool. I feel like it was very groundbreaking in the time that it came out. Because you didn't really have a lot of those type of games that came out at the time. I think the closest thing that would really kind of rival Metal Gear Solid is like a stealth action game would probably be like the Splinter Cell games. Splinter Cell was very like stealth oriented too. Um, but something about Metal Gear, man, like the character development and the storytelling, like very like Hollywood cinematic style storytelling that you never really saw back then. Um, it's a shame that Konami had such a falling out with Hideo Kojima because now, like, we don't know when there's going to be another Metal Gear Solid game. But if they put out another game, like, even if it's just a remake, I'm going to scoop that up immediately. Like, I love those games so much growing up. Um, I've got like, I've got like books like the size of like dictionaries that talk about like the lore and the story behind Metal Gear, and like how everything kind of comes like full circle in the storyline. But I know it's not a franchise; it's really for everybody. I think you gave it a try once, and you put it down like after a couple hours. So,
So yeah, so I did give it a try. I played Metal Gear Solid 5,
mm,
and I think that was like the new generation game when it first came out. Well,
yeah,
when that game came out, um, I remember it being more cutscene than actual gameplay.
yeah.
There was a lot of cutscenes, and it was cool. Like like the CGI looked really good. It was kind of hard for me to follow along with the story because starting in 5, like I don't really know anybody. I don't know any other backgrounds. I don't know the characters.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that one, I'm not really a stealth kind of person when it comes to playing games. So for me, I like the whole like run and gun. I just want to get through it really quick, and maybe I don't have the patience for it. I think that's why those games never really like resonated with me.
That's why you play as Octane in Apex because
Yeah,
you're trying
that's
to like get in there faster than everybody else.
yeah. He's definitely my main.
Yeah, that was definitely like the major criticism though. Like I would say as popular as Metal Gear Solid was, it definitely had a divided uh like fan base because you had the people that really loved it and you had the people that like didn't care for it, and basically their main criticism was like, oh, there's too many cutscenes or it feels like I'm playing an interactive movie. Um on top of that, Hideo Kojima uses very like odd themes. Like he takes a very strange approach to the character development and how the story progresses. He pulls a lot of like supernatural elements into it and like weird plot twists. And I mean it's kind of it's very like anime in a sense because you get a lot of that in certain genres of anime too. And I mean he's a Japanese director, so that's where he's going to get, most of his inspiration from. But that was definitely like a major criticism was like, the cutscenes are too long. So, but that's the number one pick for me on my gaming franchises. So,
All right. Yeah, that one's a really good pick. So number two out of five for me. Remember, no, in no particular order. It's gonna be Uncharted. Next one's Uncharted.
mhm.
I played all four of the Uncharted's. I think there's four of them, right?
Yeah,
Um,
there's four. I mean, technically, if you include the DLC that came out with Chloe,
yeah, I don't.
that there's technically five. But I hear that was a good game though, even though it was a lot shorter than most Uncharted games.
Yeah, I did play that one. I didn't finish it. I think because it didn't have Nathan Drake in it, it didn't hold my attention.
Mhm.
But yeah, so Uncharted, I played it since the first one. I fell in love with the whole gameplay, the whole like swinging, climbing, shooting. I feel like the shooting didn't really have like the tightest mechanics. Because it was kind of doing like throwing a whole bunch of things in the game at once, because it was trying to be like the climber, it was trying to be the duck and cover, it was trying to be the shooter, it was trying to be like the grappler, because you can sneak up on them and kind of like attack them from behind and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But other than that, like the storyline was really good. I felt very like invested in the storyline. It had Drake in there, not the rapper, but the actual character. It had Sully, which was more like his mentor. Which in the other games it goes into like their background about like how they met, how he kind of taught him more of the game. There was also I can't. What was her name? Elena. Uh,
Elena, yeah.
yeah. So his
Like his love interest, basically.
yeah. So like his future wife, basically, and
Hmm.
future baby mama. So that's when he first meets her. And then I think it was just them three in that game, right? And then they were pretty much fighting the villain.
Yeah, because I mean, you always had those three. Chloe was kind of in and out. Like she popped up in part two. I think she was actually more of a main co-character in part two than she was the other ones. Like Elena was in part one, and then she was not really in part two because they kind of had like an on again, off again sort of relationship. And then it wasn't until 4 they kind of brought like all the characters back into the equation again, including Sam, which was his brother. So like 4 was probably like I probably think Uncharted 4 is like a masterpiece. Like I don't think there's anything they could have done like better or worse in that game. Like it was literally perfection. The fact that you can play that on PC now is like makes me so happy that other people can experience that franchise. But
Yeah,
that's a good
definitely.
one. Yeah, that one's a good one.
Yeah. I think that's pretty much it. I know in our last podcast or one of our last podcasts we were talking about the movie where they made the game adaptation to the movie, and it was okay. I actually watched it, and it was cool for what it was. But I know
For a
how like you
video
were
game
talking
movie.
about how they like picked certain scenes out of different games and kind of just threw it in there.
Yeah. It was kind of like a
Um,
mixed bag. Like it was more like almost like I don't even know how to put it. Like it didn't really follow any particular storyline. I mean, it kind of did. But it was almost like an homage to Uncharted because I think they're just trying to make a quick cash grab out of it. Um, which is a shame because in every right, I feel like Uncharted is as good as The Last of Us in terms of like the quality of the game and like the storytelling, even though they're both very like different kinds of games. Um, I wish that Uncharted would have got the same level of attention as like the show on HBO is going to get for Last of Us. I would love like an Uncharted series, but I don't know, whatever. Sony, dumb
yeah, I
sometimes.
mean they have the material. There's like how many treasure hunting shows or movies are there? Like
Well,
there's
between like yeah, like Indiana Jones, National Treasure, Tomb Raider, like Uncharted was heavily inspired by Tomb Raider. But yeah,
yeah, there's still hope for that. They could still do it.
still hope, still hope, still hope.
Okay,
All
so
right.
that was my number two pick. You're up.
So my next franchise that I'm like a huge fan over is the Assassin's Creed series. Um I've played every single Assassin's Creed that's come out. I played like the DLC versions of it. There's just something very unique and impressive about the world that Ubisoft builds in Assassin's Creed. Like every Assassin's Creed basically has like a new city or a new setting and timeline that they venture into, which for some people they experience a lot of burnout because just like okay, like new city, new protagonist, like new story. So it's kind of going through like that Call of Duty phase right now where they just kind of pump them out too fast and they're doing like the whole quantity over quality thing with Assassin's Creed. Um, but before the new company took over for the Assassin's Creed franchise, which was basically like they did Origins, they did Odyssey, and then they did Valhalla, which is like the most recent three. Um, they did Unity and Syndicate before that, and that's kind of when Assassin's Creed was going through like its like a change of development team. Like those two games didn't do very good in terms of the franchise, which is why they changed it up. But before that, when you had Assassin's Creed 1, 2, and then Assassin's Creed 3, and then Black Flag, like those games were amazing, dude. Like actually being able to play a character in like a fully realized world for its time. Like you had like the first Assassin's Creed took place during like kind of medieval times during the Crusades. Um you had like Assassin's Creed 2 that took place in like Rome and Italy and everything like that. Assassin's Creed 3 was sort of like the colonization of America, so it took place sort of during like the Revolutionary War and the French Indian War and stuff. Dude, like the detail that they built that world on was so like awesome to play in. The characters are really cool. They were complex. The villains were really cool. It kind of put like an interesting twist on history that you don't really like think about. Like you think about like the Illuminati and like the Freemasons and stuff like that, and how like history is kind of like not what you think it is. like they did that in Assassin's Creed that raised a lot of those questions too. So growing up and playing those franchises, I just had so much fun. I thought the combat was really good. Being like stealthy and assassinating people was like super satisfying. Like if you like stalked your prey, and if you were able to like get in and blend and then like take that person out and then escape like nothing ever happened, was like the most satisfying thing you could ever do in Assassin's Creed. So that's very high on my list of favorite games, is the Assassin's Creed games. So
Okay. I think I tried Assassin's Creed. I don't think I got too far on it because once again, it's one of those stealth games, and I don't know what it is with stealth games. I can't get into it.
I like being a ninja.
Yeah. So they also did a movie adaptation with Assassin's Creed, which you said that it wasn't really that good, or it was okay.
They missed the mark on that one. Yeah, I mean, like it was just which is, it's baffling because the producers, the Ubisoft actually worked closely with the development of the movie, and there was just so many decisions made in the movie that were different from the game that I didn't understand. For example, the Animus, there's a device, or there's basically a device in Assassin's Creed called the Animus, and what it is you sit in the Animus and it takes your DNA and it allows you to relive the memories of your ancestors. That's the basis of Assassin's Creed. And you have to relive the memories of your ancestors so that you can find out where these uh, artifacts called the Pieces of Eden are. The Pieces of Eden are basically these sort of like magical supernatural object that gives the user like absolute power, like whatever it may be. But they have to use like the memories of the ancestors to figure that out. But the Animus is just like a bed that you sleep in. You know, they just take your DNA. You're like in this sort of like comatose state while you're like reliving these memories. And what they did in the movie was they like strap you into this like big like arm like mechanical thing, and everything that you do in your memories like your character is like doing in like real life. And it was like the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like it basically like turned you into a puppet while you're asleep, and they're just like swinging you around this like room with this like transformer arm. I'm like, that's like, why did they do that? It's a bed. Like you don't even have to like spend money on like CGI to like develop this thing, but they put money into this like mechanical arm that like grabs you and like throws you around everywhere. Like this is the Animus. I'm like, no, it's not. That's not the Animus. It's a freaking bed. Like it looks like a massage chair. So that's my gripe about the movie. So
All right, not bad. So next one on my list, what is this, number 3?
mhm,
Yeah, and so number 3, I'm gonna go with God of War. God of
mhm.
War has been so fun. Every game has been so fun. All the way from like the very first one. I even played the one on the PSP. I can't remember
Yeah.
the name of it.
They had Chains of Olympus. Chains of Olympus, I think, was the first one that came out on the PSP.
An
And
Ascension, right?
then, well, Ascension was actually technically the fourth Assassin's Creed. Or I'm sorry, not Assassin's Creed, the fourth God of War that came out on PS3. I can't think of what the second game was though. Like, Chains of Olympus was one thing. I gotta look it up. Go ahead and talk about the game. I'm gonna look real quick.
Yeah, so back then they didn't have well, if you're familiar with the newer God of Wars, they have it's kind of like a upgrading system for your armor, for your like your shield, your weapons, your health, stuff like that. Back then it wasn't really as integrated like that. It was pretty basic. You have the same moves, like you have basic moves when you start, and then you get to unlock more moves as you progress through the game. You also get to, I think your life bar goes up a little bit more. You get to be stronger. It didn't have the rage, but it was still good. The storyline was really good, especially from the beginning where they're telling his origin story of why he has the red on him, why he has the white on him. I'm not going to tell you, but it's very interesting. You can find it on YouTube. I'll put it in the video below of how he gets it. But
I'll definitely say that for like anyone that's never played a God of War game before, like just play them because they're good. The game that we're trying to think of is Ghost of Sparta. So they had Chains of Olympus and they had Ghost of Sparta, which were technically prequel games to the first God of War. So
Okay, so I think I had the first one then.
mhm.
But yeah, that one was super fun. I remember I bought it, I played like the shit out of it, and then I stopped playing it. I found my PSP years later and the game was still inside. I turned it back on and I got right back into it. I started over and I was hooked on it again. I know the new God of War that just came out was a 2018. I
Yeah, I think
was
so.
I was addicted to that game, especially fighting the Valkyries at the end.
Mhm.
Because there's different Valkyries for every like progression that you go through. You fight one, or you can even skip it and fight them all at the end. It depends, but I
Yeah,
remember
they're
that.
optional bosses, but like they all have different move sets that you had to understand and get better at. And then when you fight the final Valkyrie, it uses like the move sets from all the other Valkyries that you fought, and you have to basically like they combine into like one Valkyrie that you have to fight.
Yeah, it was good. The storyline was really good. The storyline with his son Atreus, pretty much what happened because the mom had passed away at the beginning of the game, and they're going on an adventure to spread her ashes at the highest peak of the mountain in the valley.
Spoiler alert, Carlos.
Well,
Spoilers,
I mean, it
please.
happens very early in the game, so it's not
I'm
really
pretty sure it's in the
spoiling
trailer.
anything.
I think it's in the trailer too.
Yeah,
It's kind of interesting to me too how many people like are praising God of War now that have never played any of the previous God of Wars. Because I have like such a huge appreciation for Kratos' character in the new God of War because I know exactly where he came from. So it's funny to hear all the people that are like praising it that have never actually played it, which is why I tell people like please go play like the old God of Wars, even if the mechanics are a little old and it's more of like a hack and slash platformer versus what it is now. It's a lot more intimate and like it's more of like a third person action game now versus like where it came from, which was more of just a hack and slash kind of game. So
yeah. So I'm pretty much like a quarter of the way on the new one, on the God of War. What was it called?
Ragnarok.
Yeah, Ragnarok. I was trying to
Yeah.
find the cover of it. But yeah, I haven't had time to play. Like I really want to spend like a good like 5-6 hours just straight playing, but I don't have that kind of time.
I was gonna do it today, except I had stuff going on. But I told myself that like I'm not gonna play like any video games unless I start playing God of War again because I picked it up and put in like 3-4 hours into it, and then I just haven't really played it since because like too much has been going on with the holidays, and then now we're back to work again, so I gotta find like that time to grind it. But
Yeah, so that's pretty much all I have for God of War. It's a really good game. If you can start on one and play through the whole series, it's definitely worth it. Highly recommended.
yeah, I'm actually gonna like add on to that one a little bit too because for me like that's definitely like one of my on the top of my list of like favorite gaming franchises, and specifically going back to like the OG God of War games. Like Kratos was such a badass character. Like he was like the perfect anti-hero, like for like revenge, bloodshed, didn't care about like anything but getting his revenge. Super, super tragic backstory. Um, the setting that they used in the original God of Wars, I mean, like if you've ever watched like the Wrath of the Titan movies and all that stuff, like imagining like gods and titans just going at it with like little people just being there as bystanders. I mean, that was like God of War throughout the entirety of its like first phase of the franchise. Being able to battle like Zeus and Hades and Ares with all these like magical like weapons and blades and just being an absolute badass. That was such a good franchise growing up, and he was such a good character. Even now, like I know a lot of people don't like the new Kratos now because he's a lot more like docile, a little bit more passive. They want like the old school rage Kratos that just gets pissed off and doesn't care about anything. But he has a lot of things to be responsible for, which I think is great storytelling in the new games because it's really a game about fatherhood and consequences and making sure that your children don't relive the sins of your father, and that's really what the new games are about. So like it's an interesting contrast to how Kratos is developed as a character. But they're all good, like up until the brand new games that have come out. Like it's an excellent franchise. So that's what I'll say about that one. But I do have a few more on my list, but I'm not going to go into all of them. I think the next one that I'm going to add, just based on my personal experience and how excited I usually get for this franchise, is the Mass Effect series. Um, I really like the Mass Effect series. Um, Excellent storytelling, excellent RPG, made by a company called geez, who makes them? I can't think of who makes them right now. Uh, my boss Brandon's gonna kill me that I can't think of the company that made it. BioWare. It's made by BioWare. But it was really unique for its time because the original game came out, I think, on the Xbox 360. It originally came out on the Xbox 360. It was its own company, and then they got my bad. So it was a Microsoft game initially, developed by BioWare, and then EA bought the rights after the first game, and then they made a trilogy from that. The cool thing about the game is all the decisions and consequences you make in the first game transferred over to the second game, and then that transferred over to the third game. So basically, like you were totally vested from beginning to end, based on like who lives and dies in your party, what type of character the protagonist has become, because he's basically like every decision you make in the game will determine if you're sort of like good or bad throughout the series. Um, but that will carry over into the next game and the next game. So like, if you didn't play the first game and like say you started on part 3 or something, you're completely missing out on the experience and the different choices and endings that you could have gotten based on your playthroughs. So I really like that one a lot. It had a really good storyline, really good character development. It was an RPG, so it did have some of those sort of typical RGB tropes where you had to grind for experience points, you had to level up your characters, you had to level up weapons. So it did have a little bit of grindiness to it if you had to advance the game in your character if you were like struggling on certain parts. But I thought the world building was great. It was a great sci-fi game. Kind of gave like a new tier of sort of space exploration that they were trying to mess with. Uh, which is disappointing when they came out with the fourth game, which was Mass Effect Andromeda. Mass Effect Andromeda was supposed to be sort of like a prequel to Mass Effect 3, but it was a completely different storyline, completely different characters. They were trying to go in a different direction, but I guess at the time the company that was developing Andromeda had got split in half because you had another team that was working on Anthem, and like I don't remember if you remember Anthem. Um, it was back when like all the looter shooters were becoming a big deal. They had the Division, they had Destiny. Those were like becoming like a big thing. So the Anthem and EA, they were trying to do the same thing, and it ended up taking all the best developers from Mass Effect and pulling them over to a different project. And then Mass Effect Andromeda ended up falling flat on its face because they just didn't have good developers on this series. So, but the original trilogy was really, really good. I'm still giving my boss crap for not beating the third game yet. He said he's going to eventually. So
All right. Yeah, so I never played Mass Effect. The only thing I know about Mass Effect was I think the last game. I remember watching all the glitches and stuff like that, like the faces, like the eyeballs were like kind of like popping out or something, or they had
it
no
was bad.
expressions.
Really, really bad glitches. It was so bad that they had to put out a patch. They put out a patch like a few weeks later that fixed a lot of those things, and it pissed off a lot of people because people that already started playing the game was like so far past that point that they couldn't re-experience it anymore after they fixed all those ugly glitches that were in the game.
Oh man.
Like you had characters they would talk and they would have like no facial expression whatsoever. And like their face and eyes didn't even move. It was just like a stone face. It was really bad, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't have any input on that game. I wish I did, but I got nothing.
Yeah. Those are kind of my mains though. Like I mean the three that I talked about plus God of War. I definitely say those are my mains. Uncharted is one of my mains too. So I think the rest of the things I have on my list are sort of just like supplementary from this point forward.
Okay. So I got two more. So number 4 is gonna be Gears of War. Gears of War, I feel like the first 3 games, they were so good. Especially the first one. I remember I went to the movies and the song came on, and you see Marcus Phoenix kind of running down the street. You see like this big ass spider pretty much pop out of the ground. He dives into the building, kind of like to avoid it. And some other stuff happened in the trailer, but it had that one song. Gary Jules, I think it was his name.
Yeah, they played it during what was that movie? Donnie Darko. Michelle told me it was in the Donnie Darko movie, and then I got into like a discussion with her. I'm like, well, that's not where the song came from. Like that was from Gears of War.
Yeah.
That was from Donnie Darko.
Yeah,
I
so
remember.
I mean that song is stuck in my head because of that trailer. Just that little like teaser trailer of it was so epic. When the game came out, man, I played the shit out of it. And it was back then when like co-op was like a really big thing. It was all the rage. Everybody was hopping online. And it was like a couch co-op too, as well as online. So but it was so good. It was just like the gameplay they introduced. Well, I don't know if they introduced, but it was heavily like injected with the cover and shoot tactics, which was awesome. It had like the slide. It had the running looked kind of weird because they were kind of like crouch running, but
they were like big, like lunky dudes too. Like these were like hulked out looking fools, like running like full sprint. They're like chainsaw gun.
Yeah. Oh yeah, the chainsaw was also a really cool like add on to that game, because you just walk up to the whatever I forgot what they're called, but you just chainsaw them right down the middle, and you can even like go like in their back and stuff like that. There's different animations for it. They also had the chainsaw like duel. I think that came out like in the second game or the third game, is one of those two. But if you guys try chainsaw each other at the same time, you kind of go into like this like war, and you gotta like mash the buttons, you gotta mash, and it was cool. Like each game I felt like got better. As soon as the like the head creator, what was his name, like Clint, I can't remember his name, but
I don't remember. But I do remember though, like we used to get online and play that a lot. Like it wouldn't even be like multiplayer. Like we would be like back when we used to care about like trophies and achievements, and we were trying to get like those achievements. Like it was like the horde mode. Like what mode was that we used to play?
Yeah, it was horde.
It was called horde, right? And like it was just like it was like 4 players, and you guys were like stacked up, and you just had to like defend like every single wave of like locusts that they would send at you, and then you had to get that trophy. You had to play on like the hardest difficulty, and you had to survive for like 10 minutes, and then you had to get like so many sniper kills or whatever. But like dude, we used to play that a lot. Gears probably had the best co-op experience that I can remember of like recent memory. Like to me that was like like that's kind of what like defined like co-op play, is like when Gears of War came out, because that was like legit. That was like legit co-op, and it was like they were good games.
Yeah,
Characters were really good too. Tragic characters.
Yeah, they really went into their backstory, so you really felt their pain.
Yeah.
I don't think they really went into the backstory with Marcus Phoenix. So, like the game starts off like he's in jail. You don't know what he did. not until like the like way future in the future they came out with Gears of War like Judgment Day or something like that.
Yeah, that was like the prequel. That was basically like them leading up to getting Marcus Phoenix out of like jail or whatever.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
game it wasn't that good for some reason. The mechanics felt so weird.
Well, it kind of changed like after Gears 3, right? Because even so you had Gears 3, then you had the one that you just mentioned, and then Gears 4 came out, and then Gears 5 came out. I haven't played either 4 or 5 since Gears 3. Gears 3 was the last one that I ever played. But like I know that it's something did feel kind of different about it, or it didn't feel as refined as like the first trilogy did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like at that time there was a bunch of games coming out with co-op. They had Army of Two. You remember Army of
Yeah.
Two? That one
Army of
was a
2 was similar
fun.
too. Like that was like really fun for a co-op game. They had like really cool mechanics in that one. Army of 2
Uh
was good.
yeah, they also had Kane and Lynch. I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
Kane and Lynch. That one was
I
really
remember
fun.
Kingdom Reach.
They came out with the second one, it was fucking horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible. Do not recommend. Negative 100 out of 10. Do not play that
Damn,
game.
that's too bad. I mean, I don't honestly, dude, like we're at a point in time where I don't even think people know what that game is or where it came from.
Yeah, that's true. It's just kind
And
of
that was
showing
made
my
by
age.
that was actually a Square, I think it was like a Square Enix game that made Kane and Lynch when maybe when they picked up like Crystal Dynamics or whatever. But yeah, I remember that one. But Gears of War was like the standard, man. I remember that. Gears of War 2, like easily like the best game out of like all of them. Like the boss battles in Gears were so freaking epic. Like every boss that you fought was like a puzzle. Like they all had like a weak point that you had to exploit. And it made it like super challenging because like they're still throwing like hordes of freaking locusts at you the whole time. I just remember how freaking like massive some of those boss fights were. So
Yeah, and they're bullet sponges also. So
yeah. Well, on the higher difficulties especially, man. Yeah, and then
yeah,
you had the action queue to you had to do like the tactical reload. Like if you miss your tactical reload, then basically like you screwed up your reload for the next like mag that you popped in there.
yeah,
So
that
that
was
it like did
called
more damage.
yeah, that was called active reloads. I remember
Yeah,
those.
the active reload. So
Yeah,
they had a lot of cool mechanics that they introduced in that game that they haven't really done recently.
but those
So
active reloads they really help during multiplayer because if you can
mhm.
reload faster, then it gives you the advantage from the opponent.
Oh hell yeah! And if you're freaking like a slide like wall grabbing around with a shotgun and doing that active reload, you're basically like popping everybody's heads off before they have time to react. Dude, people that played like Gears multiplayer that were like at top like they're the top level, like level players were so freaking sweaty and like I couldn't do shit in multiplayer, man. Like I don't think they had any kind of like skill-based matchmaking back then. Like you just had whatever like host server that you were playing in and you just had to play people in that area and people that just like did nothing but play Gears of War like day after day after day. Like you would just get like jacked in those freaking lobbies, man. I hated Gears multiplayer because I could do nothing in that game. I was getting killed constantly, dude. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I would go like 2 and like 31 in like death match scenarios.
Yeah.
So bad, man.
Yeah, so that's my fourth out of the five. So yeah, so if you wanna go next.
Yeah, I'm not gonna go into like detail with a couple of them that I have on my list, but I'll just mention them just because they're franchises that I enjoy, but like the quality of the games kind of go like up and down depending on like which version you're playing. One of them I kind of talked about already was Splinter Cell. Splinter Cell I thought was always like a great franchise because it offered something very unique to the stealth action mechanics. It had like a whole like shadow mechanic to where if you were hiding in the shadows, like nobody could see you, and that was like a really cool thing. The guy that voiced the character of Sam Fisher, the main protagonist, the actor that played him was Michael Ironside for the most part. I think they changed his voice in later games. Um, but Michael Ironside, when he was Sam Fisher, like those were like really, really fun games to play. They're pretty old now too, but there were some pretty good ones in there. Um, and then one of the series I really enjoyed for the Nintendo was the Metroid series. I grew up playing all the Metroid games, so Metroid's and Super Metroid especially was like one of my favorite Super Nintendo games. And then they came out with the Metroid Prime games that were like on the GameCube, which changed everything to sort of like more of a first person shooter kind of a thing. Um, but it kind of established what a genre that people call like Metroidvania now. Like there's a lot of games that sort of like emulate that style of gameplay that Metroid kind of was founded on. Um, but I enjoyed those games growing up. Those are a couple on my list that like if a new game comes out, I'm definitely paying attention to it. So
Okay.
it's our next one.
So, well, on the Splinter Cell, I remember playing Splinter Cell when it came out on the original Xbox, and I feel like the only part of that game that was hard, besides like the gameplay, was using the controller, because that controller was freaking huge. Everything was hard. Like they had like the black and white button that was all the way on top that you had to like take your hand off to actually like push them.
Like the OG one.
Yes.
It was like massive, man.
Yeah, I can't remember if those buttons were on top or on bottom, but I remember I had to take my whole
stack like two of these together. Like
yeah, yeah, but yeah, the Splinter Cell game was pretty fun. Once again, I'm not into the stealth. I was always just in there to run and gun. But yeah, I never played Metroid, so I don't have any input on that one.
Yeah, the other thing too about Splinter Cell was when it first came out, it was a PC title. So a lot of people didn't have access to it right away until it was on Xbox. And I think it was a very like downgraded version on Xbox, which is probably why it didn't appeal to a lot of people, because initially it was supposed to be for PC. It was better on PC. So even the like the controls too, like going to a game that was developed on PC where you can use like a full keyboard for actions and hotkeys, and then trying to condense that down to a controller doesn't always translate very well. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so last on my list is Last of Us.
Okay.
So there's only been two games technically. They have remakes. They have what do you call it, where they kind of like do like
three. They've technically had like 3 remakes now. Well, like 2 remakes. They had 1 DLC game, and then you've got like The Last of Us 2. So
yeah,
technically you could say there's 4 games, even though there's really only 2 stories that they can get out of it.
Yeah, so the first one was really good. I think like what it came out like 2013. It was a long time ago.
A little bit after Uncharted. I think Uncharted 2 came out, and then in between Uncharted 2 and 3 is I think when they made The Last of Us, because I'm pretty sure it was first on the PlayStation 3. It was like literally like at the end of the PS3's life cycle, because they had to like squeeze like every ounce of power out of the PS3 to develop that game. They like pushed it to the limits.
Yeah, so I mean that kind of explains the remake for it on the PS4.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so Last of Us, really good story from beginning to end. All the characters in there, like you feel for them a lot. That's why we're really excited for the show that's coming out on January 15th. I think this episode is probably going to come out after that date.
Mm-hmm.
But look out for the YouTube episode that we're gonna discuss it after it comes out. You guys sent me a message saying that it was 83 minutes long, so
yeah.
So I mean
like a movie.
Yeah, basically. But so the good thing is that it comes out like at 6:00 p.m. for us, so it's not gonna be that late into the night. I kind of don't want to do like a really long video on it, but if it does go long because it's so good, then it is what it is.
Yeah. I'm hoping that, like, I know it's only going to be the first episode and we have very high expectations, but I hope there is a lot to talk about, and I hope if we do a podcast after, it's not about how much we hated the episode and how whack it is. So here's like crossing our fingers, man. Like they're hyping this movie up a lot, or the show up a lot, and even Neil Druckmann, the producer, was straight up like, we're gonna like break that that video game adaptation curse. So
All
like
right,
we'll
well,
see, man.
let's hope, man. I'm gonna have a couple of drinks. Yeah, I'm gonna have a couple drinks while watching it, just to enhance it.
Yeah. I actually thought about putting Last of Us like on my list too, but the thing is I don't think I can yet just because there really is only two games that are out. I mean like Uncharted has a little bit more relevance to me because they have come out with more. And there's a lot more story they can flesh out of that. My concern for The Last of Us 3 is like if they do continue to make more games, they either need to focus on like different characters within the story, or I mean, like I don't know, like because I don't want to spoil anything for people that like haven't played the games or haven't watched the show. But like the main character at the end of Last of Us 2, like I don't know how much further they can go with that story. Like I feel like they kind of wrap that story up the way that it should, unless you start focusing on like side characters or if you like focus on like a whole different faction or different, like in the same universe, but different people that are surviving. But I wasn't really sure if I should put that on my list all at once, just because I don't think they've really come out with enough games yet for me to say it's like a true like franchise.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially, that was my gripe with the second one, is they force you to play as a person in the game that I don't want to play as.
You didn't want to play as, yeah. Yeah.
And then she has like so much impact on the story that at the end, like what happens, and you don't feel like you get closure. Like I know that's a little spoily, but without spoiling anything. But
Yeah, I can understand that too, though.
I wanted closure from, you wait so long for a game, and then for them to end it like that with no closure. And it kind of, like, I understand why it rubbed the people the wrong way and why there was like a little bit of outrage for it. But
yeah,
I mean, if they do make a third one, I hope they just focus on Ellie, and maybe she can be like how Joel was to her, like raising somebody else that's like important to the story too.
yeah. Like I will definitely say, like, between both games, like I love both games so much. The first game, like, easily a masterpiece. I think based on the story alone, the first game is my favorite based on the story alone. But part 2 had such like good gameplay. It did have a lot of characters, and it was a very like emotionally draining game. I think what I will say about Uncharted 2 is, like, despite the story and where it went, it was definitely like emotionally draining because I feel like we were going through um like withdrawals, or um like when I don't want to spoil anything. I don't want to say anything. But it was definitely like emotionally draining. Like I remember like Michelle like watching me play that game, and I would just be like so sad, like depressed, not because the game was bad, because it was good, but it's just like you really do like feel like the pain that the character is going through in the game, uh which is why it's like hard, like it's hard to play compared to the first one. Like the first one's a lot more straightforward. Um, but then like part 2 really goes into like the consequences of what happened in the first game. So it's like two very different sides of the same story. So there's actually a game too I wanted to bring up that I didn't add on my list, but definitely don't want it to be a forgotten franchise, is BioShock.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
yeah, the BioShock games, man. Like I remember playing definitely like the first two, and then 3 was also good, even though technically part 3 is like a different storyline. Um, but man, I would love for them to come out with like another BioShock game. BioShock 1 and BioShock 2 were so good. Like they were such good games.
Yeah, I remember playing the first one a lot. I don't really remember the second one, but yeah, the first one was really good. I loved it.
Yeah,
Definitely
like
a top 10 for me.
the twist, dude, the twist in that game was such a good twist. it's probably like a little dated now if you play it, but it introduced like so many like cool mechanics. It wasn't your like typical like run and gun first person shooter. You had a lot of abilities and a lot of different like ammunition you could use for different enemy types, and you could use the environment to your advantage. Like, you could electrocute the floor, you could set the wall, you could set the floor on fire if it was like oily and stuff like that. Um, the characters were really cool. The twist was really cool. Part two, even though it's a sequel to part one, it's not like it directly story related to part one, because I know in part two you play as like a big daddy. And that was actually kind of a cool like twist. It was more actiony. I feel like part one was a lot more like survival horror-ish, whereas part two was a little bit more on the action side.
I do remember that. Now that you bring up the Big Daddy, I do remember playing it. I think personally for me, I think that's why I didn't like it, because it
Okay.
wasn't like a continuation of the first one.
Yeah, because they didn't really like carry the story on. It was sort of like taking place around the same time as the first game. And then part three, which was Infinite or Infinity, um, was like a completely different storyline altogether. But that one was also really good. I remember that had some really cool twists in it too.
I remember watching gameplay and the trailers on it. I never touched that game.
That one's actually really good. The story was actually really good in that one. It's got a cool twist to it. So, but I'd be excited for like another BioShock game that comes out.
All right. So I think that's pretty much it for our list. I know there's a lot of games that we left out. I know there's Halo, there's Dead Space, there's hundreds of games.
Evil.
Yeah, Resident Evil.
Yeah, Resident Evil.
There's a lot of games that we can talk about. Maybe we can do a part 2 to this one. And
yeah, we could probably do one where like we're just talking about the ones that we care about the most and the ones we like the most. But there's obviously a lot of franchises out there, and some of them have kind of like fallen off, and some of them were just kind of like hesitantly waiting for them to come back. Like Silent Hill, that's another great franchise that has kind of gone away. We used to talk about Resistance back on the PS3 days. Like, that's another one that just kind of went away. And
yeah, Resistance was so good. There's also Killzone. Killzone was really good.
Man. Yeah, Killzone was dope. Thing about Killzone is it kind of like has a new found franchise now with the Horizon Zero Dawn games. Same people that make Horizon Zero Dawn is the company that made Killzone. But I remember, dude, Killzone was sick back in the day. I do remember Killzone.
Yeah, a lot of games, man.
A lot of games, but we'll get to them all eventually. Probably not on this podcast, but near future we'll be definitely doing a lot more. Talking about we'll talk about some of those forgotten franchises that we just wish they'd bring back. So
yes, definitely. So that's gonna wrap it up for this podcast. Thank you guys for listening all the way to the end. If you did listen all the way to the end, put a number 3 in the comments below so we know who you are. Like and subscribe. Once again, my name is Carlos.
And I'm Sean, guys. Thank you so much for joining us on this new episode. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
Peace out.